Prabupada continued to accelerate. After the first initiations and the first marriage, he was eager for the next step. He was pleased by what he had, but he wanted more. It was the greed of the Vaishnava, not agreed to have not agreed to have sense gratification, but to take more and more for Krishna. He would go in like a needle and come out like a plow. That is to say, from a small, seemingly insignificant beginning, he would expand his movement to tremendous proportions. At least that was his desire. He was not content with his newfound success and security at 26 Second Avenue, but was yearning to increase ISKCON as far as possible. This had been his vision, and he had written it in the ISKCON Charter, to achieve real unity and peace in the world within the members and humanity at large. Swamiji gathered his group together. He knew that once they tried it, they would love it, but it would only happen if he personally went with them. Washington Square Park was only half a mile away, maybe a little more. Ravindra Swarupa. He never made a secret of what he was doing. He used to say, I want everybody to know what we are doing. Then one day, D-Day came. He said, we are going to chant in Washington Square Park. Everybody was scared. You just don't go into a park and chant. It seemed like a weird thing to do, but he assured us, saying, you won't be afraid when you start chanting. Krishna will help you. And so we trudged down to Washington Square Park, but we were very upset about it. Up until that time, we weren't exposing ourselves. I was upset about it, and I know that several other people were, to be making a public figure of yourself. With Prabhupada leading, they set out on that fair Sunday morning, walking the city blocks from 2nd Avenue to Washington Square in the heart of Greenwich Village. And the way he looked, just by walking, he created sensation. None of the boys had shaved heads or robes, but because of Swamiji, with his saffron robes, his white pointy shoes, and his shaved head held high, people were astonished. It wasn't like when he would go out alone. That brought nothing more than an occasional second glance, but today, with a group of young men hurrying to keep up with him as he headed through the city streets, obviously about to do something, he caused a stir. Tough guys and kids called out names, and others laughed and made sounds. A year ago in Butler, the Agarwals had been sure that Prabhupada had not come to America for followers. He didn't want to make any waves, Sally had thought, but now he was making waves, walking through the New York City streets headed for the first public chanting in America, followed by his first disciples. In the park where In the park, there were hundreds of people milling about, stylish, decadent villagers, visitors from other boroughs, tourists from other states and other lands, an amalgam of faces, nationalities, ages, and interests. As usual, someone was playing his guitar by the fountain. Boys and girls were sitting together and kissing. Some were throwing frisbees, some were playing drums or flutes or other instruments, and some were walking their dogs, talking, watching everything, wandering around. It was a typical day in the village. Prabhupada went to a patch of lawn where, despite a small sign that read "Keep off the grass," many people were lounging. He sat down, and one by one his followers sat beside him. He took out his brass hand cymbals and sang the Mahamantra, and his disciples responded, awkwardly at first, then stronger. It wasn't as bad as as they had thought it would be. Jagannatha. It was a marvelous thing, a marvelous experience that Swamiji brought upon me, because it opened me up a great deal, and I overcame a certain shyness. The first time to chant out in the middle of everything. A curious crowd gathered to watch, though no one joined in. Within a few minutes, two policemen moved in through the crowd. Who's in charge here? An officer asked roughly. The boys looked toward Prabhupada. Didn't you see the sign? An officer asked. Swamiji furrowed his brow and turned his eyes toward the sign. He got up and walked to an uncomfortably warm pavement and sat down. His followers straggled after to sit around him. Prabhupada continued the chanting for half an hour, and the crowd stood listening. A guru in America had never gone into the streets before and sung the names of God. After Kirtana, he asked for a copy of the Srimad Bhagavatam and had Griva read aloud from the preface. With clear articulation, Hayagriva read, disparity in the human society is due to the basic principles of a godless civilization. There is God, the Almighty One, from whom everything emanates, by whom everything is maintained, and in whom everything is merged to rest. The crowd was still. Afterward, the Swami and his followers walked back to the storefront, feeling elated and victorious. They had broken the American silence. Allen Ginsberg lived nearby on East 10th Street. One day he received a peculiar invitation in the mail. Practice the transcendental sound vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This chanting will cleanse the dust from the mirror of the mind. International Society for Krishna Consciousness, meetings at 7 a.m. daily, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 p.m. You are cordially invited to come and bring your friends. Swamiji had asked the boys to distribute it around the neighborhood. One evening, soon after he received the invitation, Allen Ginsberg and his roommate Peter Orlovsky arrived at the storefront in the Volkswagen minibus. Allen had been captivated by the Hare Krishna mantra several years before when he had first encountered it at the Kumbh Mela festival in Allahabad, India, and he had been chanting it often ever since. The devotees were impressed to see the world-famous author of Hall and the leading figure of the Beat generation enter their humble storefront. His advocacy of free sex, marijuana, and LSD, his claims of drug-induced visions of spirituality in everyday sights, his political ideas, his exploration of insanity, revolt, and nakedness, and his attempts to create a harmony of like-minded souls, all were influential in the minds of American young people, especially living on the Lower East Side. Although by middle-class standards he was scandalous and disheveled, he was in his own right a figure of worldly repute, more so than anyone who had ever come to the storefront before. Allen Ginsberg. Bhaktivedanta seemed to have no friends in America, but was alone, totally alone, and gone somewhat like a lone hippie to the nearest refuge, the place where it was cheap enough to rent. There were a few people sitting cross-legged on the floor. I think most of them were Lower East Side hippies who had just wandered in off the streets with beards and a curiosity and inquisitiveness and a respect for spiritual presentation of some kind. Some of them were sitting there with glazed eyes, but most of them were just like gentlefolk, bearded, hip, and curious. They were refugees from the middle class in the Lower East Side, looking exactly like the street sadhus in India. It was very similar, that phase in American underground history, and I liked immediately the idea that Swami Bhaktivedanta had chosen Lower East Side of New York for his practice. He'd gone to the lower depths. He'd gone to a spot more like the side streets of Calcutta than any other place. So today's reading, we heard about the first public kirtana in America. Um, One day he decided that he was going to go to Washington Street Park and chant and take all the disciples with him. Police came, of course, and while he was, instead of continuing to chant on the grass, he had to move to the sidewalk. He was able to chant for a half an hour, though he had spectators. No one else really joined in with the devotees and the chanting. Um, so after that, Prabhupada decided to hand out flyers in the neighborhood for more people to join. And one of the great authors of the beatnik movement, Allen Ginsberg, and his colleague Olorsky received one of the invitations and came in to talk with Prabupada. So I read a little farther